How much could you get done if your body was fully charged up? If you had all the energy needed to get everything you done, how far could you go? Would you be able to conquer the world? Could you get that list done? What if you charged and protected your body and your mind with the same time, energy, and effort that you do your cell phone? What if you were intentional and you deliberately set aside time in order to rest, knowing that your body, mind, and spirit can't go on forever, that the more efficient and intentional you are with that rest, the better you'll be able to perform. Much like a car that's almost broken down, much like a cell phone that has no juice, if your body doesn't have enough fuel to get going, there's no way you're going to be able to execute. And so in today's episode, we want to talk about the idea of rest. Intentional, deliberate rest, allowing your body time to heal, giving your mind a minute to rest, allowing your spirit a moment to just relax. Because sometimes you need it, because you're human. Because when you go on for too long and too far without a little bit of rest, that's when you get to that breaking point. That's when you stress. That's when anxiety comes in. At a certain point, you gotta realize, as a human, you weren't built to work into infinity. Taking rest is as important as the work you do, if not more important. Because in between every single time you go and you put in that work, there has to be a moment where you take your foot off the brake. There has to be some time where you sit back and reflect, where you aren't always expending energy on doing, but you're actually taking time to heal and reflect and learn. Or maybe just do nothing. Maybe you've been so overstimulated that all you need is to just sit back and chill. Sometimes you need to take rest. In fact, often you need to take rest. And there's many different ways to do it. So today we want to talk about the idea of understanding and embracing rest. Because we can't go on forever. You can't work into eternity. And when you try to grind and work yourself into the bone, we know how it ends. Every single time it goes the worst way. When I was a kid, the story of John Henry always fascinated me. But now as a man, I look at it totally different. Here you got this man, human, working as hard as he can, grinding to the bone, giving everything he has in order to defeat a machine. The story of John Henry could easily become any one of our lives if we allow it to. Remember, John Henry was a coal miner who dared to do the impossible, find enough hustle, grind, and juice to defeat the machine. John Henry decided to stand up, to give it all he had, and see if everything he had was enough in order to defeat this powerful beast. And it wasn't. He worked himself into the ground, he grinded himself into the dust, and even though he was able to win the small battle of beating that machine in that very moment, the machine was able to be turned off. The machine didn't have feelings. The machine didn't get tired. The machine didn't have a heart or lungs or a mind or spirit or brains or any of that stuff. So John Henry worked himself into the bone for nothing. He won that small bet, but in the end he lost a much bigger war. I wonder how many of us are doing ourselves like John Henry. How many of us are working ourselves so hard in a way that's so inefficient that we'll never be able to win. Sometimes you can't defeat the machine. Sometimes the only way to defeat the machine is to take a step back and rest. And so today we want to talk about the idea of consistent, intentional moments to just slow down, to just stop, to just give it a rest and allow yourself a minute to breathe. Because every single thing can't be 1,000%. When it is time to work, when it is time to grind, when you do need to go and hustle, you'll be able to give it the best you got if you're giving it the best rest you got. If you aren't charging yourself up, there's no way you're going to be able to perform. Because when you allow yourself those moments to stop and slow down, to heal and to build energy and momentum just by doing nothing, it is a priceless skill and it is a wisdom that you never want to let escape you, that you need to rest, that you have to take moments to just stop and build energy and heal and just give yourself a moment to reset. But if you don't understand the value in it, if you can't appreciate the fact that you don't need to be working at all times, in fact, in order to maximize your efficiency, you need to be taking a rest, without understanding that there's no way you're going to be able to maximize what you become, who you become, and how quickly you get there. If you want to take the long route, if you want to do it the difficult way, find an excuse not to rest. But if you want to be efficient and if you want to perform, you have to look at rest as important as you do the work. Because it's the rest that allows you to do the work. And it's the work that allows you to rest at night. I would argue to you that on the days in which I put in the most work, on the days in which I know I've handled business, on the days in which I put in work, get done the things I need to, and execute in the best way possible, I can rest assured that my rest was well earned. And so if you've done what it takes and you want to continue to build on that momentum, You gotta find and appreciate the idea of rest. It's not only an art, but it's a skill. Knowing when to rest, knowing how to properly rest, not feeling guilty about resting because you know how important it is. All of these are ways in which you need to focus and condition your mind in order to become your best. In order to get the most out of life and yourself, you gotta give yourself a little bit of recharge. You gotta give yourself a little bit of downtime, and it's gonna pay off dividends. When it comes to rest and charging up, we understand that when it comes to our cell phone, once you get that notification that you're down to 10 or 20%, you do something. You make sure you put that phone on a charger, and you make sure that you're able to continue using it. Well, your body isn't a machine, and your mind won't give you a notification, and your spirit won't give you an alert. And so it's up to you to be aware of your body. It's up to you to embrace where your mind is, and it's up to you to tell yourself it's okay. By the way, if you felt guilty for taking rest, how would you ever even be able to enjoy it? Life isn't meant to be grinding at all times. Sometimes you need to sit back. When you take rest, it's the perfect time to show gratitude and appreciation for how far you come, for the fact that you're still here, and for the fact that you got an opportunity to keep getting it. It's the perfect time to show gratitude and appreciation for the fact that your mind is sharp and clear and you're able to still execute when so many others aren't. The fact that you woke up, the fact that you're breathing, the fact that you still got the motivation and the drive and the hunger in order to go and get it. So few people are willing to take just the small steps, but if you're willing to listen and learn and dedicate yourself to be better, that's all the more reason to be thankful and allow yourself the time to rest and recharge so that you can go out in that world and go get it. So that you can go out in that world and perform to the best of your ability, because you owe yourself and you owe your future. Your body and mind come first. When your mind is weak, so is your body. When your body is in disarray, your mind is probably giving signs that it is too. If you don't take care of your body and it hasn't been performing up to its ability, chances are it started in your mind. When you're distracted with no energy, when your mind is unable to focus, how are you going to tell your body what to do? Chances are if you got a weak mind, you also got a weak body. Chances are if your body is in disrepair, your mind is probably following suit or maybe leading it. But whatever the case is, you need to make sure that you're embracing rest. You got to embrace rest as much as you do the grind. As much as you love the hustle, you got to love the rest too. Because the rest is going to be what allows you to keep going in order to keep performing. Or it's going to be the thing that allows you to actually enjoy the sweetest moments in life. How can you stop and smell the roses if you're falling asleep because you're so tired? If your body is sore and constantly in pain, how can you actually enjoy that vacation? Maybe you'll be able to relax, or maybe the plane ride there will be torture. Maybe you'll be able to kick back, or maybe you're setting yourself up for failure by not recognizing one of the most important pillars of what you're doing. God himself had to rest on the seventh day of creation. Why would you not have to? None of us get to see the sun at all times. We get a little break. A weak mind leads to a weak body. A weak mind leads to low discipline. A weak mind leads to ineffectiveness. A weak mind leads to procrastination, because a weak mind is going to lead to a weak body. A distracted mind is going to lead to destructive habits. A poisonous mind is going to lead to that poisonous procrastination in the real world. Once you learn to embrace and respect rest, you'll get the most out of yourself. When you think about the things that people trade off for rest, sometimes it's worthwhile, but a lot of times it's nothing. If it's screen time, choose the rest. If it's more healthy food, choose the rest. If it's stressing you out, choose the rest. If it's not helping you or building you towards better, choose the rest. If it ain't necessary, if it's holding you back, if it's making things harder, choose the rest. You don't need to stay up and watch TV or play video games if it's going to have you tired in the morning. If you know that going to the gym is going to require a little bit more rest, if you're trying to get your fitness back on shape and you know that you're going to the gym and you know it requires more energy, you got to plan a little bit more rest, because your body needs time to heal. But more importantly, your mind needs time to heal. Your brain needs time to relax. You can't always be going, because once you are, that's when ineffectiveness comes in. That's when you start getting sloppy and make mistakes, which eventually lead to your downfall. Take the rest. We often charge our phones just enough to get the job done, but our bodies aren't like phones. Some people charge their phones up just enough to keep going. But if you did that with your body, you would always be running on fumes, and you would never get the most out of who you are and really life in general. On the other hand, some people constantly charge their phone. Some people never let their phone get below 80-90%, but they don't keep the same energy with their body. They don't keep the same energy with refreshing and renewing their mind. They don't make sure that their spirit is sharp and that they're in control of all of the above. If you aren't giving yourself the proper rest, how could you be in control of the decisions you make in life? Your brain isn't sharp enough in order to do it. If you aren't giving your brain enough time to rest, how could you be getting the most out of those workouts you're giving if your body isn't given enough time to heal? As long as cars have enough gas, they can go as fast and as far as the gas will allow them to. And once the gas runs out, all it takes is you to fill it back up and you can get right back on the road. We aren't cars. We aren't machines. We aren't able to go in that way. And when we neglect to recognize and realize that, that's when we get the worst outcomes. How can we ever expect to perform at our best or even enjoy life to the fullest if we never take a moment to just sit back and reflect? If you never get the chance to celebrate the victory, to have fun with those loved ones, to show love to people who deserve it and who support you, what's the point of it all? What's the point of living life without actually living life? If you were a robot, it would be acceptable. But because you're not a robot, and because you need to recharge and reset sometimes, understanding and embracing this is one of the best things you can do for yourself and the people around you. The people around you love you. The people around you want to see you your best. Your future self is begging you, do better, treat me right. Give me the rest that it'll take so that in 10, 15 years, I'm still able to perform. When you think about the idea of fatigue, it's something that's gradual. It's something that takes place over time, which means that one good night of sleep won't be able to replace it. 1 hour off of staring at the screen won't be able to replace it. Once you hit that point of fatigue, you gotta be even more intentional and even more deliberate about giving yourself time to rest. Because as cool as people make it seem to grind and hustle into perpetuity, you got a limit. And of course I'm not saying not to hustle, not to put in the work, not to squeeze every little bit out of life that you possibly can. But at a certain point, we all gotta rest. Even the biggest and the baddest and the best of us all have to realize, all have to recognize that we're human. And as humans, we just need a rest. I don't believe we were created to work for the entirety of our lives forever. Yeah, we need to put in some work. Yeah, we need to be deliberate. Yeah, we need to have goals and focus and be disciplined and make sure that we're getting things done that are important to us. But we also need to rest so that we can do it. If you're serious about executing, you got to be serious about resting. Part of the execution is the restitution. You need to rest. You got to be intentional about your sleep. You got to be intentional about recharging your brain. If you feel yourself getting to a point where the stress is unmanageable, you need to rest. What eventually happens to a pot that's left with the lid on? Eventually the pot that has the lid on it is going to explode. You got to give yourself a chance to rest. When you're always tired, when you're always stressed, when you're always overworked or overstimulated, you need to rest, because there's only so much time that we can healthily absorb being stressed and tired and anxious. Maybe the reason you're procrastinating and kicking the can down the road is because you don't got the energy to do it. Give yourself that rest. Once you've given yourself that rest, there's no excuse not to get it in. Once you've given yourself that rest, now you got the extra boost to go and get it. But be deliberate, be intentional, and use that rest like the fuel that it is. And like anything that's powerful, you got to learn to manage it. The beautiful weapon, the precise advantage. Too much rest is a bad thing. Now, of course, I couldn't make a video on rest without addressing the elephant in the room. Far too many people are resting for far too long. Too many people spend too much time doing nothing. It's so important to have a healthy relationship with rest, because whether you're resting too much and getting nothing done, procrastinating, distracted, doing too much, or you're grinding yourself into the dust, both ways are unsustainable. Both ways will lead to an early death, and both ways can be improved upon if you simply rest. If you got the hustle, drive, and motivation, it's a beautiful thing. Charge it up. Rest yourself and you'll go even further. If you don't have it, if you know you've been resting too much, put the rest aside. You've been resting too long. You've been waiting too long. It's time to get out and go and get it. And nobody should have more advantage than you, because you've been resting forever. If you know you've been slacking, if you know you've been underachieving, if you know you're behind where you need to be, congratulations. You have a reserve of rest. You now have the license to go and get whatever it is that you didn't. And to make things even better, you're fully charged up. You got all the energy it takes. So if anybody can get it done, and if it was ever within your grasp in order to make it a reality, now will be the time. You got the energy, so go and get it. And if you got no energy, Give it a rest. If you're giving it your all, setting goals, achieving them, putting in work, handling business in a way that you know you could and should be, the rest is critical. And that's not just a double entendre, it's the truth. And so as seriously as you take your finances or technology or car or job or whatever other material thing you can think of, your health is your wealth. However healthy you are, it doesn't matter how much money you have or wealth you accumulate or success you're able to find and attain. If you're gone, what will it be for? If you're not here to enjoy it, what was the point? If you're gone before you get to see it, why did you even do it? And if you never get to enjoy it, especially with those loved ones, you got to start to question, was it even worth it? Right? The energy you expend must be repaid. And unlike a car, once you get to the end of your tank, you don't perform at the same ability. When a car is at 10% gas, it will still go 70, 80, 90 miles per hour. When your body is at 10% energy, there's no way you're still going to be able to give it 70, 80, 90% effort. You're running on fumes and you're sabotaging yourself. In many respects, we can say that if you don't want to be successful, that if you want to self-sabotage, the best way to do it is to make sure that you're not resting. To tell yourself that grinding yourself into the bone and that working even harder and not taking the time to rest, reflect, sleep, learn, grow, build, and do whatever it takes in that off time. If you aren't willing to embrace that concept, you don't have a right to success. You don't get to complain about not being where you are because you didn't embrace the things that it takes to get there. Rest. Developing the wisdom and discernment to be able to tell which parts of your life could use a bit of a rest and which part of your life could use a little bit of gas is everything. If you're able to develop that, you could become unstoppable. If you're truly committed to giving it everything you got to understand that whatever energy you gave must be repaid. If you know me, you know I love Full Metal Alchemist. It's an anime that talks about the idea of equivalent exchange. Well, equivalent exchange basically means whatever you want, you got to give up something equal in order to get it. If you want $1 million, you got to give $1 million worth of effort. If you want to be the best of the best, you got to give the effort that the best of the best will give. You don't have a right to something that you didn't give up the equivalent exchange for. You got to respect the law of equivalent exchange. You can't get something without giving something in return. You don't get to go somewhere without giving something to get there. It takes energy. But with the energy it took to get that car there, a space was created in the engine. And when the engine of your life seems like it's sputtering, maybe it's because you haven't taken enough rest. Maybe you haven't been intentional about giving yourself time to just sit back and think and reflect. Maybe going is the worst thing you could do. And maybe if you sat back and looked at things from a bird's eye view with a good night's rest, maybe, just maybe, you could get the most out of life too. To rest is a verb. It's not a passive thing, which means to my hustler, to my entrepreneur, to my business and legacy builder, you must be active in choosing to rest. Why? Because when you rest, your body is healing and replenishing that energy and giving you more of what it takes in order to go out into the day. You also dream. Your mind also wanders. When you start to get that feeling where your brain is no longer able to focus, where it's hard to concentrate driving, where your eyelids are heavy, you got to give it a rest. And so it's not that less is more, rest is more. When you can understand and embrace the concept of resting, you understand that rest is more, not less. And so it's the rest that actually brings you more of the success you crave. You need to rest. Keep the same energy that you do with your phone and devices, only times 1,000. Because those devices are machines. And the other thing about our phones, tablets, laptops, whatever device you can think of is, we could replace them. But when it comes to our bodies and our minds, we only get one. And so if you waste your best years working on things that don't matter, in a way that's not efficient, in a way that drains your energy and steals away your time and barely allows you to enjoy any of it, you got to find a way to reset. And if somehow, some way, your life isn't allowing you to do that, it's time to start reevaluating. If your mind isn't performing efficient, rest, retreat. If my mind isn't performing efficiently, there's no way I can go out into the world and do the things I need to and execute at the level that I know I'm capable of. I need to rest. And I'm not here to tell you that I'm an expert at making sure I get the rest, because I too am guilty of working too hard. Sometimes I'm up till 4 or 5 in the morning shooting videos, editing, working on things for clients, doing this for my business. But at the end of the day, I only get one body. But at a certain point, like the great John Henry, I cannot outwork the machine. I cannot be better than a robot. And so it starts with simply using the time that you've been given to actually go to sleep. Not scrolling on your phone, not being distracted, not finding different things to do, but actually going to sleep, because your body can't go forever. As much as you reasonably can, make sure you're actually getting sleep and giving yourself that rest. There are tons of ways to maximize the efficiency of your sleep. Do a little bit of research into them. You owe yourself that much. And while I could go into all the different ways to maximize the efficiency of your sleep, find what works for you, find what's going to get you the results you need, and go forward with it. Maybe what you need to do is create a routine so that you don't have to think so much and it just becomes second nature. Because by having that routine, that's one less thing your brain has to do. Because by making things simple and having a system, you make it so that your brain expends less energy doing menial things. Aside from going to sleep, you also want to find other times to maximize your time and minimize the time you spend doing repetitive, redundant things that really don't matter. If there's a way for you to automate or simplify or create a system so that you don't have to constantly think and wrestle with your discipline and argue with temptation, if you could create a system that removes all of that, you would have that much less energy expended on nothing and that much more energy to do what it is you need to do. And again, that's a form of rest. Becoming more efficient is a form of rest because you're giving yourself more time. Time is one of the most precious things we have, but so is rest. If humans spend about a third of their life sleeping, how could you not make sure that the rest you get is efficient and effective so that you can continue to work in the other 2/3 that you are awake? They say we're supposed to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Well, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, there's gonna be days and nights where you don't get that, where you aren't able to get a full night's rest. But on the nights you are, make sure you do get it. When you can, make sure you're maximizing the chances you get in order to recharge, because you're gonna need them. Because there are people, including your future self, your future family, your future kids, your future prospects, all of them are dependent on you taking rest so that you can take the next step. If the next step is the most important, how can you take it with full confidence, knowing that you gave it your all just in giving yourself rest? If you're in a race against somebody who has a fully charged battery and yours is at 50%, why would you ever defeat them? We often struggle when it comes to life, we often struggle with this idea of competition and embracing the fact that others want the same positions and opportunity that we do. But it's true. And it's not that everyone can't be successful, but the truth is there's more than enough spots for everyone who's willing to put in the work to be successful. But so few people are willing to do it. So if you're one of the ones who will not only put in the work, but take the rest necessary to make sure that you can continue, there's no way you won't win. If you can't get a full 7 to 8 hours, how do you maximize the 4 to 5 hours that you do get? Maybe you arrive to your hotel late and you're only able to get 2 to 3 hours of sleep. Do you spend that time doom scrolling and doing nothing? Or do you spend that time recharging and giving yourself a little bit more? The food you eat is a big part of the energy you have. Oftentimes, the things that are most delicious are heavy and do us harm. In one of my next videos, I'm gonna talk about food and how our diets impact the way we execute. But if you know for a fact that eating certain foods slows you down, makes you not wanna work, the relationship with rest is what we're talking about today. Embracing getting enough of it, but also recognizing and realizing that maybe something is slowing you down and it's causing you to rest a little bit too much. Once again, it's a balancing thing. 7 to 8 hours of sleep is a beautiful thing. If you can't get enough, get what you can. But if you're getting more than enough, if you've been gluttonous with the rest, now is the time to lock in and hustle, because you got more energy than anybody else, which means you can get it in the way that nobody else can. Because we want to enjoy life. We want to be able to embrace the moment. We want to smell the roses and be able to acknowledge and appreciate when it's time to show gratitude. But how can we do it if our body is constantly on, when you don't have the energy it takes in order to execute? So if you've been resting and not working, use that energy to start getting ahead of the game. And if you've been hustling, working, doing what it takes in order to get where you know you want to be, but you got to recognize and realize that the rest is as important as the work. This is the infinite evolution. Go to sleep, get the rest, recharge, reset, and your results will follow suit. Give yourself a chance to rest and reflect, to learn and grow, to appreciate the beauty of life, because not everyone has been given that opportunity. Rest, go to sleep. This is the infinite evolution.